Good afternoon. My name is Michael Waymeyer, and I have the very good pleasure of having my social capital go way up by being seen on the platform with these distinguished speakers. So nobody is happier to be here than am I. We are going to talk about, or our panel members are going to talk about utilizing technology for advocacy. I would refer you to the handouts for their full and very extensive bios. These are very accomplished people. Just very briefly, and I'm going in order that they were listed in the program and are seated to my left. To my immediate left is Liz Weintraub. Liz is among the most visible self-advocates in the nation. She works and contributes to excellent work done by the Council on Quality and Leadership. She's a past chair of the Maryland Developmental Disabilities Council. I think what's going to be featured today is her very visible role in policy efforts and in communicating policy in ways that enable people with intellectual and developmental disabilities to participate in the policy process through the Association for University Centers on Disability. To my further left is Kathy Enfield. Kathy and I are neighbors. Kathy is from the Kansas City area, go Royals, and has been a leader in self-advocacy, certainly at the state level. It seems like any time I cross the line over into Missouri, I run into Kathy doing something. But nationally as well, for the self-advocates becoming empowered, the national body for self-advocates, and recently is part of a small group of self-advocates that are supporting the Coleman Institute to promote adoption of the Declaration of the Rights of People with Cognitive Disabilities to Technology Access and Information. And then down on the far left is John Smith. John is with the Research and Training Center on Independent Living at the University of Minnesota. John has contributed significantly to research in issues related to self-determination, which I've benefited directly from, as well as recently involved in, and I assume he'll talk some about self-advocacy online. So without further ado, each panelist is going to talk for about 10 minutes, and that should take us right up to our breaking point. So without further ado, breaking point? The break. You know, Freudian there, I think. The mind can absorb only as much as the butt can endure. With that, Liz, have at it. Please turn off my microphone.
Am I supposed to talk about the clip right now?
I guess. Is there a clip that they're going to show first?
Just a fire introduction.
She's mic'd, so it should be.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Tuesdays with Liz, a disability policy for all. Today we're going to be talking to Julie Petty, who is the first person with an intellectual disability chairing the Presiding Committee on People with Intellectual Disability. Thank you. Thank you for coming and talking with us, Julie.
You're welcome, Liz. Thank you for having me.
The first question is, how do you feel as the first person with ID chairing the very important committee?
Well, I'm very proud to be the first person with intellectual and developmental disabilities to be the chair. I think not only is it historical, but it's an honor, and I feel like our presidents and our other allies are finally ready to give leadership to people with disabilities. And not only was I appointed chair, but this committee that we have right now is the first committee who has the most self-advocates and people with IDD. So I'm really happy to be the chair.
That's great. The next question is, I understand that the report that we're going to write to the president will be on technology.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think about technology from your point of view? And what do you think the agenda should be regarding technology?
Well, I think we are in a time that we use technology every day. I mean, we're using it right now to do the video and to help educate people. So I think going forward, when we talk about every age, when we talk about the lifespan of people and people with disabilities, that technology needs to be totally accessible and totally inclusive. So.
Well, thank you. It was a great honor to talk to you, and for your time, I would like to give you this mug.
Oh, thank you. You know I love coffee.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you have any questions about this edition of Tuesdays with Liz, please leave them in the space below. Thank you, and I look forward to talking to you next week. Bye. Thank you, and I just would like to make 2 comments about Tuesdays. One is the reason why I wanted to do Tuesday with Liz isn't just for me to say that I'm on the screen or whatever. I wanted to, and I asked Andy and Kim if I could do this because I wanted. I was concerned that people with disability and eventually I'm realizing it's helping others to understand about policy. That if we can't be part of the policy and if we don't understand the policy that is happening here on the state level or in DC, how can we ever advocate for ourselves? And so therefore, that's why, and I'm really, as I said, this isn't for me. I'm really happy that I'm part of the video, but so if you would like to use it in your states, please do so, or if you have other issues, please talk to me. Thank you.
Liz, you've done what nobody else has done, is you've come in well under your time. Have you had any feedback about the impact of Tuesdays with Liv? Have you heard any stories about how particularly people are using that form of technology in advocacy and self-advocacy?
Yes, I do know that ASAN is putting it on their website. I know that many people first organizations have put it on their website. People have told me that that they do that because it helps people to understand what's going on, either on the state level or on the national level. And I just heard last week that it's more than our network. It's people from the PNA, people from the DE Council. So it's getting it out there, and that's really exciting to hear.
That is exciting. The ASAN is the Autism Self-Advocacy Network, correct?
Yes.
Ari was here last year during the Coleman Conference. I know that a lot of, I'm looking at the audience at Jeffrey, who I know watches Tuesdays with Liz every week, right, Jeffrey? Yeah. Yeah, all right. All right. Kathy.
Yes.
Hello everyone. My name is Tata Info. I'm from Missouri. I'm a vice president of SAB. I went to the Institute to invite me to the Staffins. I've been to Staffins a long time. It gave me opportunities to open doors for me. I would have thought my mom and dad to help me. This is interesting. Thank you.
Kathy Enfield here, but now with a different voice. I wanted to demonstrate to you how technology, which in this case is my iPad, provides an accommodation for part of my disability, which is clarity of speech. Before the iPad I spoke publicly, but I was not very effective because I was hard to understand and often required vocal assistance. My iPad, along with the assistance I get in preparing my remarks, now enables me to speak with you with much more clarity. It has enabled me to be a more powerful advocate and to have my words taken more seriously. I have found that most people place a reduced value on the words of someone who has a speech difficulty, so clarity of speech is important for me. It has also demonstrated to me just how important technology is in many ways to increase the ability of people with cognitive disabilities to advocate. Advocacy, in general, and especially advocacy by and for people with cognitive disabilities, which is the heart and soul of the self-advocacy movement, always faces the additional barriers of communication problems, logistical requirements, and funding shortfalls. However, we are fortunate that technology has begun to provide us with some tools which are making it possible to advocate more effectively. While most of this technology has involved advances in methods of communication, they have also had positive side effects which have helped to relieve some of the logistical and funding issues that have been barriers in the past. This technology includes things we now take for granted but that have proven to be powerful change agents. They include such things as the internet, smartphones, and the advent of various types of social media. These technological advances have provided advocates with quick and effective access to information utilizing websites, blogs, and search engines such as Google. It has also provided almost instant access to information about events as they occur. Not only is the information communicated quickly, it is provided with few travel requirements and reduced expenses. This same group of communication access technologies also enables advocates to communicate with each other both individually and in groups to conduct business such as board meetings using various programs such as GoToMeeting. Once again, with very little logistical or financial input compared to face-to-face meetings. Another piece of technology which is proven to be very powerful for advocates is hardware such as the iPad I am using, smartphones, and many other similar devices. Many of these have text-to-speech applications which, as I am demonstrating, is a powerful accommodation for those of us with speech difficulties. These are proving to be much more flexible and efficient than the older speech assist devices and much less expensive. Not only are these devices of great help in speaking to groups and individuals in person, they are also very effective in assisting advocates in having their voices understood over the phone. This is especially valuable in participating in teleconferences. We have also seen over the past few years an amazing array of technology to assist individuals with physical disabilities. They are proving to be a great help in overcoming some of the logistical barriers to advocacy. They include technological advances in both prosthetics and in personal transportation devices such as powered chairs with various methods of controlling them. We are now on the brink of seeing cars on the road that will be able to drive themselves, and us, to whatever destination we choose, thereby helping to resolve the ever-present problem of transportation that almost all people with disabilities experience. I just hope they make it convertible. I can hardly wait to feel the wind in my hair. While technology access has significantly helped many of us to advocate, it is having a more negative effect on those individuals who do not have access to it. There are an estimated 28 million individuals who have a cognitive disability, but research shows us that only about 25% of this group receives any type of services, and that many of those receiving services are not being provided access to communication technology. Tragically, a number of these individuals are exposed to these technologies in school but find themselves without the resources to access it once they have transitioned out of school. This is the same technology that is now required to communicate and participate in their communities, including their ability to advocate. Sadly, there are many individuals with cognitive disabilities that have something of value to say, and yet their voices are not being heard. The lack of access to communication is effectively silencing the voices of millions of advocates who deserve to be heard. Many of us live in the community but are not afforded technology access by our service providers. I find it amazing that, in today's world, communication access is not considered to be a vital service. I believe it should be mandatory, just as having heat, light, and water is. So while technology is doing much to assist and strengthen advocacy for those who are fortunate enough to have access to it, ironically it is moving the world further out of reach for those who do not. When I recognize this, I realize that no discussion about utilizing technology for advocacy should take place without recognizing what an impact this lack of access has on advocacy. It also made me realize the importance of the Declaration of the Rights of People with Cognitive Disabilities to technology and information access in our efforts to overcome this very serious barrier to advocacy. I hope there is no one in this room that has not read and endorsed the Declaration. If you haven't, please do so. I can't begin to tell you how important advocacy is to people with disabilities, and access to communication technology in today's world is vital for the success of advocacy. But all of this is dependent upon access to technology being universal, and the Declaration is the key to making this happen. So I am asking you to join me in supporting it and utilizing it to help millions of people with cognitive disabilities get the tools and the opportunities they need to become advocates. They need our help and we need theirs. Thank you.
Richard, don't go yet. Kathy, do you mind if I ask you a follow-up question? Is that okay? I know you've been very active in the state of Missouri in trying to get adoption of some of the simple technologies, and I guess the iPad isn't so much a simple technology, but widely available technologies like the example you've provided. I know there are lots of reasons why people don't have access to that, but can you share what you think might be the primary reasons that people aren't getting access to technology that's available today and readily available?
That's because no one can afford the cell phone or iPad, and there's reasons meant to help people to understand that not alone to help people to understand how to raise one.
So there's the issue of inequity, particularly economic inequity for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities is restricting access to even the most seemingly simple and affordable technology. And then did you say there was just an awareness of what's possible? Do you think that people know what something as simple as an iPad?
I thought that written on it says that nobody have a space problem to understand how to talk to the iPad.
And I presume that when you speak at self-advocacy conferences with your iPad, it's a way that you're modeling what's out there available for them, right?
Yes.
Thank you very much, Kathy. All right, John, you should be mic'd up and ready to roll.
I need the slide.
Ah.
Thank you. Right here. Hi. I'm here to tell you about, I'm here to tell you about self-advocacy online, which is another way that self-advocates can use technology. I'll get better. So what is self-advocacy online? Self-advocacy online is a website with lots of accessible and engaging information that self-advocates want and need. It uses pictures, videos, and just a few words to share important information. And the navigation buttons are intentionally large to help people get around easily. So why is self-advocacy? Why? Because especially for people with intellectual disabilities, a lot of websites look like this. There's too much information on one page, and information is often all text, nothing for visual learners. And on this side, it looks like everything's a link, and on other websites, links are hidden, so it's really hard to navigate. The result for self-advocates, frustration. People can't get the information they need. So let me show you self-advocacy online and show you how it's different. Our most popular page on self-advocacy online is our map of self-advocacy groups. We have information on over 400 self-advocacy groups all around the U.S. Anecdotally, we're learning how self-advocates are using this to network on projects, even set up pen pal relationships across the country. Another exciting section of self-advocacy online is our learning center. These are media rich, lots of videos, lessons on topics of interest to self-advocates. Each lesson has about 20 slides. It takes about 3 to 5 minutes to complete. Our most popular lesson is on speaking up. Another section of self-advocacy online is our story wall. And here we have short and powerful stories from real self-advocates from around the U.S. and beyond. So right now we have over 200 surveys that cover 90 different topics. Self-advocates really like this section of the website because it's really easy to navigate. All you do is click on a picture and the story pops straight up and self-advocates plan the story is really inspirational. So let me show you one from a self-advocate from England.
It's really important that everybody with an intellectual disability feels involved in their world, and it can be right from a young age, right all the way through their life, and making sure that everybody is given a fair chance in life to do what they want to do, but with the right support.
The last section I want to tell you about is our research for all sections. And here we have research translations on topics chosen by our self-advocate advisory group. We begin with recent journal articles or reports that have information particularly important to self-advocates. We select the key ideas and the key results. State them in simple yet accurate language and determine the best way to tell the story to self-advocates. Self-advocates really appreciate our opportunity to see real research results in ways that are easy to understand. Some of our more popular topics have been we translate the AUCD report on the development of self-advocacy around the U.S. And we've also translated a lot of research on effective training for DSPs. Look for us on social media. Self-advocacy online is active on Twitter, and our Facebook page has over almost 1,400 friends, and we update it daily. What's next? Well, we're going to continue adding original content. So, self-advocacy online will always have new lessons, and new research, new stories will just grow and grow. We're marketing the site to individual advocates and self-advocacy groups, and really human families, DSCs, and resources to share with the people they support. And we're evaluating the site with self-advocates and learning how to make it easier to navigate. So we want to get rid of some scrolling, and because that's difficult with self-advocates. So maybe even automate some navigation too. So thanks a lot. Come to our website.
John, if I might ask you the same question I asked Liz, do you have a sense of how self-advocacy online is being used by, in the field, and who's using it, and Are you getting stories about how it's impacting advocacy opportunities?
Yeah, I've heard mostly from self-advocacy groups. A couple of things I've heard is, again, the sharing between groups and the pen pal relationships. And I've also heard that some self-advocacy groups are using the lessons during their self-advocacy group meetings. So, a group might watch a learning lesson together as a group online and then talk about it